Good morning, my name is David Pettit, and today we are going to be talking through the installation of the Herdvision camera. The first part, when Herdvision arrives, it comes in 4 parts. First of all, we have the box with all the electronics. So in here we have the reader, we have a small computer, a power pack, and the power insert here, and a little power button on the front. We'll talk a bit more about that later on. The second part is the camera itself, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail as we get into the installation. The third part is the actual arm that carries the camera, and it's the connection between the antenna and the camera. The fourth part is the antenna itself, and everything fixes onto the antenna, and this fixes either onto a wall or onto the race that we have available on the farm. When the electronic box arrives, it generally won't have any connections to it, or a connecting piece. So this is a half coupler that allows us to fix onto the upright post. So that fits on as high up onto the box as you can manage. I don't know if you can see inside. We simply drill an M10 hole at the back, pass that through, M10 nuts, and then just wind it up tight, and then that's fixed. We also have then a couple of options. We need 3 cables to go into the top of the box. We need the power cable, the Ethernet cable, and also the USB-A to USB-C cable that connects to the computer to the camera. What I have done here is I use a conduit with a terminal block. So we just drill a hole through the top, fit the terminal block to it, and I'll bring via the conduit the power cable and the Ethernet, and then I've got a gland, 20mm gland with a 7mm insert, so that I can tighten that so I've got a waterproof seal on the top of the box. So the antenna is sort of the key part of the install, really. So I'm just going to open this up. The antenna essentially sandwiches a race. And this should just lift off like so. So the inside of the antenna assembly has, this is the antenna. This has a copper coil that goes around, and that charges the transponder and also listens for, obviously, the reply back from the transponder. We have a cable connecting at the bottom, so it's right out of the way of the cows and any water. Comes up through, and then this part will go inside of the electronic box and plug into the reader. The key point is to have this at the right height for the transponders that you have on the cows. So if we got leg transponders, we don't want to sit this right on the ground. We want to have at least sort of 75mm from the bottom of the antenna to the floor to allow all the water to rush and all the muck to be cleaned out underneath without the actual antenna sitting in the water. If they're collar transponders, so the cow's walking with collars, we need to have the bottom of this antenna, this point here, no more than 500mm from the floor. So that would be the minimum. If it's ear transponders, then we can put this up much higher. So we can be up sort of 1.7 to the top of the antenna, and that's plenty. So it's not a fast and fixed rule. So a lot of it will depend on the size of your race that you're going to attach to. So I'm just going to put this in place because there are a couple of key points that we need to consider where we site the antenna. Right, we don't want any vertical bars in line with this vertical loop. And I wouldn't want to avoid anything like that where we've got metal in front of a horizontal loop. So the position we want the camera is best described from this little picture. So here we've got a raceway. We want the bottom of the camera to be 2.8 metres, 2,800 millimetres, from the bottom edge of the camera to the floor. So that distance there, 2.8 metres. At 2.8 metres, the field of view at the floor is just a little bit under 5 metres. So we've got this triangle, that's the field of view. What we need to avoid is any crossbars. So if we've got loops from here going back to a wall or something, they need to be outside of that triangle. So if we had this bar coming up here, and that was looping back to a wall, so long as it's up here, at this point going across that way there, that's fine, but I don't want any crossbars in this field of view going across the race, because that will certainly stop, we won't be able to pick up the cows very well at all. So avoid any crossbars unless they are out here, out of that field of view. So 5 metre clear space ideally. So for this install, I'm assuming that we've got ear transponders, and I'm happy with this height. I'm happy with the 3 bars coming through here. So the bottom bit of wood rests onto one of the railings. You can rest on the top railings if that's the size. That isn't a problem. That's normally enough that it misses the top loop. But for this one, we're fitting for ear transponders. This rests on one of the race bars, and then I just lift the top bar on. Right, so from that point, I can just finish that, tighten these up. I have an angle piece that I use for the box to sit on. That just fits in there. So I'm just going to carry on and tighten all of these up, and then we can move to the next step. Just one word, this is the back side. So if this was on farm, this would be the inside of the race where the cows go. This is on the outside of the race. So now the antenna is all sandwiched between the race. So the antenna is just pushing against the race bars. The whole thing is fairly sturdy. But just to make sure nothing's going to move, I now fix tech screws. At each point we've got a bar there, and there, at least 4. And that will then totally hold that in place. So to find out the right height, we need to cut that. And we measure to the top of the top plate here, which is 1780 millimetres. So I've got 1780. We know that overall height to the top of this has got to be 2988. 1780. 780. So I need to cut this arm to 1208 millimetres. So that's my mark. I cut the arm at that point. I'm not going to cut this one because I need it tomorrow when I do an install, but you get the idea. So that would be 1288. That then fits into top of the antenna, and then we do that up tight. So we've cut it to the right length. We make sure that the arm is coming out 90 degrees perpendicular across the race, and then we just tighten these up as such. Okay, so now we've got the arm up there at the right height, coming out perpendicular to the race. That's all fixed. That's all fixed. All that in tight. And now we can move to putting the box on. So here we have the box. I open the half coupler. So I'm going to fit that onto the arm. I drilled 2 holes in the bottom that correspond with 2 holes on this piece of angle. You can also see I've drilled a 20mm hole down the bottom here, and that's going to take the antenna cable. So that slides on, slide down there, and then do the half coupler up. Insert the cable, open the coupler, and just loosely put that on. So that's all just set on. And just tightening the coupler up there, and then put these little stainless steel bolts in through the bottom, one each side. And we can tighten those up later. Tighten the coupler, and then that's all there is. That's nice and fixed, I should say. The cable, yeah, we've got the antenna cable here now, and we have the connection with a little white mark there, and that corresponds with a little white mark on the end of the antenna cable, and that just plugs into there. Put that out of the way. So at that point, the box is all fitted. The cable, this USB cable, would normally be separate. So at this point, I feed that through the gland at the top, pass it round. It's a USB 3, and that has to go. We've got 4 ports on this fitlet. We've got 2 USB 2s on this side, and there are 2 USB 3s on this side, the side where the power cable goes into, on the power button. So we just insert that into a USB 3 port, out through the top of the glands, and that will then feed up through the arm. So I've just used a bit of insulation tape around a bit of Ethernet cable. I'm just going to push that through. So this would be a 12mm hole that I've drilled in the back. So it wants to be about 50mm above the top of the box. And I'm just going to feed that through, and then go up the other side. So I just gently push that and pull at the same time, and just feed the cable. I need plenty of cable at the moment. That can just be pulled off, take off the insulation tape, and that's ready for going in the camera. At a later, when all this is finished, I normally then just fill, if there's any, I just put a bit of silicone around this gap here. This is on top, this is well away from the cows. This is going to be somewhere nearly 2 metres height. It's on the cows will be on this side, so it's well protected. But I just normally put a bit of silicone in there just to stop it too much water getting inside. I bring the cable in on a cantry wire, and this is 4mm stainless steel cantry wire, using one of these risers. So that just slides on, self-locking, loop it round. So normally this would come in at somewhere about this height. Put the rise on, stretch that over to wherever the cable is going to be coming from. I'm not going to fit that for this cable because we're in the workshop and we don't need to do that. But anything that comes in, bring the cable in to the highest point, and then come down the arm in the conduit and then into the box. So I'm just going to bring a cable over temporarily and then do that, bring that into the box here. So along the cantry wire into the conduit, you can, if you're just using these 20mm glands, just bring it down using cable ties, power on one side, Ethernet, shielded Ethernet cable on the other side, but I'm just using those. So I stripped the end of the cable that's come in here. We've got a brown live, blue neutral, and a yellow and green earth. And literally, I just put those in, it flips up, push it in, drop it down. So we have another plug socket here. So if we want to use a Wi-Fi air link, the Wi-Fi air link can fit anywhere on this pole, high up there. And we've got this space down here where we can fit the injector. So that can fit that way or that way. And then that would just plug into here. And then the Ethernet cables and the PoE injector would come into here. So we've got two RJ45 ports on the fitlet. Doesn't matter which one is used. So I just cut that down to size. Put an end on and just plug it in. Next step is to fit the camera onto the arm. This has to go one way. So we've got two lenses here. We've got an IR emitter, which has an oval cutout, and then we've got the RGB. We need the IR emitter to be, so if the cows are coming from your direction, coming underneath the camera this way, the IR emitter needs to be furthest away. So as the cows come, IR emitter, the furthest lens as you look from behind. I've also marked the arm, so the camera, this lens here, is central to the race. So in this case, it's 40mm. So position that in place there. And then I'll just screw that, tighten that onto the arm, more or less level. We now then feed the USB-C through the conduit, and this will fit, the conduit fits inside of that tube nicely. So I've now secured the 4 bolts with the little plastic caps that go on the end. Put them on your thumb, slide it up, and just push it into place. I would then, just again to stop any excess water going in, I just wrap some insulation tape around that joint there, and that's secured nicely, so there's no water gets in there, no water gets in here. This is secure, and I've got adjustment both along the race, and if there's any weights, if this isn't perfectly upright, then we've got lateral movement that way. So now I need to set the bottom of the camera so it runs parallel to the floor. So I measure the angle of the floor. It's pretty level. We've got a 0.1 slope downhill on the floor. Climb back up to the camera, and I set that exactly the same as the floor. Now 0.1, 0.2. So now I've got a very slight 0.1 slope on the bottom of the camera. I now tighten up on both ways, and just check it that way as well. Yeah, that's perfect. So I can just tighten this up, tighten that up, tighten these up, and we're now parallel to the floor. We now need to set the reader up to match what else is happening on the farm. So to do that, I'm going to disconnect this serial connector, which goes into the USB 3 port up here. So we disconnect that, put a USB extension cable on, and now we come down to the software. Now sometimes we need to put a shield on the back of the antenna. So this is the back of the antenna, obviously with this coming out this way. If we've got a race, the cow's coming down through the race, and then we've got a holding pen or an area where cows with transponders are going to congregate behind the antenna, then we fit a shield. The shield has to be 100 millimeters from the back of the antenna. That's sort of the minimum distance. Otherwise, the impedance is too great and it will turn the antenna off. And we use a 25 millimeter weld mesh, quite a heavy duty. And just bend in the edges slightly. So I'm going to fit that on the back here. Now the key thing with this shielding, it mustn't touch any of the racing. There must be an air gap. But apart from that, it's fairly straightforward. Okay, so nice air gap all the way round, not touching any metal. And I'm going to plug it back in a minute, and I'll show you that pretty much stops all the signal from behind. So now we can see that we've got a green light flashing from cows with an ear tag on the inside. And if I bring that round to the outside here, even though I'm right up close to that mesh, I'm getting no reads around in there. The last job, once everything's working, we need to calibrate the camera. The way we calibrate the camera is to use a flat board that again is parallel to the floor, which should be parallel to the camera. We then take a tear measurement, 1176 as a tear measurement. We then ring software support in the office. They will then log on, make sure that they can connect. They will then look through the viewer, see how flat that image is. If it's slightly got a slope one way or the other, we may just need to turn the camera just very slightly so that this board appears flat in the field of view. We do it across the field of view, so we start off in the middle. We will then move it to the entrance and then the same to the exit. So we have 3 points, and then we can see that the board is all calibrated as a flat image right the way through. At that point, we just test, put a tag in the field by the antenna, just to make sure that we're picking up the serial connection and we're reading the tags.